I'm excited to sit down with you and find out more about you. I mean, we've been running together for a lot of months, but
Right.
it's fun to ask those other questions that we haven't really talked about.
That's true. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what questions we came up with first, and then what answers we have for each
Yeah,
other.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So let me start
Yeah, you
here.
start.
Yeah. Are you a New Jersey resident? Are you originally from New Jersey?
I'm not originally from New Jersey, actually. I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah,
Okay.
way out west.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of had an interesting upbringing because my parents, they were hippies in a band. And my dad had the long hair. My mom played the tambourine, which is not usually what you think of when you think of Salt Lake City, Utah,
Right.
because we were not Mormons.
Uh-huh.
And then we moved when I was 11 to Pennsylvania. And then
Mhm.
I grew up in Bucks County,
Mhm.
Doylestown, New Hope area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I moved to New Jersey about 14, 15 years ago. So I've been here a while, but I
Uh-huh.
wasn't originally from here.
Okay.
How about you? Where did you grow up in New Jersey?
Born and raised in New Jersey, not in Morris County,
Okay.
Middlesex County. But first 20 years I stayed here, and then I was out in California for about almost 20 years, and then found my way back via going through London, then Connecticut, and back here.
Gotcha. And you were out in California because that's where you were working, right? That was,
Correct. Yeah.
and you were doing Avenger films and Harry Potter films and that type of stuff.
Yeah, living the dream. My parents took me out there for a family vacation when I was 9, and I was hooked. Went to Universal Studios, saw how they made. I guess back then it was like maybe Battlestar Galactica and Bionic Man and that sort of thing. I'm really
Yeah.
old, but like what's that? Back in the '70s, it was a big deal. So I always wanted to know how things were done.
Yeah.
I always wanted to break things apart in my mind and figure it out how. And I was always the first in school to any movie that was coming out. I've already seen it. I already have a review for everybody. So that was. I kind of knew I was going to go into that field some way or another.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure through science and engineering or something else.
Okay. And but yeah, so you said you did sports growing up. What kind of sports did you do?
Well, I did basketball, soccer, and baseball. That's all we had at our small school that I went to. I would love to have done track. Wanted to do football. Most of my family guys did football, so I looked forward to doing that. But I was a little skinny at the time. I can't tell now, but I was very skinny, and so even basketball, I was constantly getting pushed around.
Oh, yeah, that was me too. I played basketball.
Okay.
And I was like super scrappy because I'm small. So like I was constantly fouling out of the because all the bigger girls, like they were able to like really dominate. You know, if I were to go do a layup, they would just kind of put their hand up and it would be like boom. So I had to be kind of scrappy.
Yeah,
you know?
I get it. Yeah. That's what ends up happening. Like the shorter kids, they tend to be the ones that have to work harder, but they're a little bit less, they're a little bit more fearless than the big ones. Did you meet anybody else interesting while you were there?
Yeah, I mean, I met my husband there.
That's where I was driving.
Is that what you were
Yes,
going for? Yes, I met my husband when I was 18. Okay. I met him the first day of moving into our little dorm. And yeah, I was like, oh, this boy's cute. And I hate to say it because I am so one for like women empowerment and women's rights and everything. But I faked that I had a computer problem so that he would come help me. And I'm embarrassed to say it to this day. It's shameful. But it worked. Right? It worked. Now, where did you meet your wife?
Church. Oh. Yeah, met her at church. I was her sister's Sunday school teacher, and they, after a while, were saying, you should meet our sister. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe there was some compatibility because, I don't know, maybe they thought I was attractive, and maybe she was attractive. They thought we were both geeks. That's really what it came down to. It really came down to that. And it was true. It didn't take long for us to figure out, yeah, we geek out in the same way, so...
That's
how it started.
That's good. And so I know the church has played an important role in your life. Yes. What brought you into the church, first of all? And then, what is the impact today that the church still has on you?
Sure. My family is how I ended going to church. The church that we attended, my grandfather actually started the church,
Wow.
and my mother was his assistant pastor. And then when he passed away, my uncle became the pastor. My uncle was also the mayor of the town. So it was very interesting. And the thing about the African American church in general, we tend to kind of mix our politics in our church life because traditionally that was a safe place for us to have those kind of meetings and communication, right? So it's not uncommon, like Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. There's a reason why it worked like that for community leaders for many years and still to this day, because we're able to have some of those frank conversations in what seems to be a safer environment for us, but it also aligns with our, loving your neighbor as yourself type of thing. So that's really how it started, and how it has affected me now is because my grandfather was very involved, especially in that town, but also in the county, when it came to civil rights during the 40s, 50s, 60s. There was a couple of major things that happened in that town. One was a riot that he helped kind of squash. Another one was he was fighting against kids that were being put, African American kids that were automatically being put into the school that was really for slower, kind of developmentally troubled kids. They were just pushed into that group, one of which was my mother. And that's when he said, no, we're not going to do that. And so I actually can look into the old newspapers and see part of that court case, and then the judge actually saying, you know what, it's going to be a bigger problem because he's fighting now. And yes, their suggestion was, why don't you send your kids to a private school in another town? Sound familiar, right?
Mm-hmm.
A situation like that. Instead, he said, no. My mom ended up having to kind of hold out a year. So she actually lost a year of schooling and ended up graduating with her sister, which was a little hard for her. But overall, they won the battle because the lawyer said that the superintendent of schools had no right to do what he was doing, and that it would only clog up, he basically said it will clog up our local court system because more parents will come to us now that he's done this with the same problem, and we're not going to deal with it. So these kids get to go where they're supposed to go.
That's amazing. What a powerful legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening 40 years later or so, his son's the mayor, another son is the police chief. So it really affected the town.
They stood up for what was right.
Exactly.
And people saw that in them, and then they were like, oh, these people should be leaders.
Yeah. Oh, and one other thing, that same son, he was the superintendent of schools before he became the mayor.
Oh my God.
So right. So kind of cleaned the board a bit and kind of helped the town grow and become more diverse in not only their residency, but also their power structure.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. So that's helped me understand that anyone can make a change, right? And that if you're paying attention to the problems that, when I say the small people, but the small problems that your neighbor is having, it's usually symptomatic of a larger problem within the town or the government and if we join together, we can make those changes for the better of everyone.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end, because I believe that so strongly. I know you do too, and that's why I'm so happy we're running together.
Yeah, me too.